Hi, my name is Deborah Kitko. I'm with the Wayne County Public Library here in Worcester, Ohio. I'm the genealogy librarian here, and we are actually trying to reach out to our researchers and try to let them know some of the resources we do have available here in our department. Although the public library is open right now, our department is currently closed. However, we are answering questions through phone, 330-262-0916, also by email, genealogy@wcpl.info, and that's genealogy@wcpl.info, or you can contact me directly at dkitko@wcpl.info. So we've had several discussions. We've talked about just the birth, marriage, death records in general, as well as some divorce records. We've talked a little bit about 1856, 1857 records that we have here locally, and how some counties may actually have some earlier records than 1867 for Ohio. Once again, you'll want to check with the time period whenever the births and marriages and deaths were first recorded. Varies from county to county, from state to state. So you'll want to do the research and find out information on the county and state that you are most interested in. We've had a discussion about the birth records here in Wayne County. Just as a refresher, Ohio tried to first mandate the recording of births, marriages, and deaths at the state level in 1855 when they passed the legislation for that. However, it was not abided by. A lot of people just did not follow through on that. So there are a few records from 1856, 1857, some a little bit earlier. In 1867, they actually tried it again, and this time more counties were willing to go along with what the new law was. And so, generally speaking, at the county level here in Ohio, births and deaths started 1867. Marriages, once again, started at the time that the county was formed in Ohio. So for Wayne County, that would have been 1812, 1813. So we've talked a little bit about the birth records. We've talked about the marriage records. We talked a little bit about the divorces. And I also want to just keep in mind that the early births from 1867 to 1908, as well as the marriages, can be found through FamilySearch.org, and you may find indexes available through Ancestry Library Edition. And normally you have to come to the library to use Ancestry. This is a database that's right now, due to COVID-19, is available for you with a library card from home. So you can actually search Ancestry for some of these records as well. In terms of the death records from 1867 to 1908, that's what we have here on microfilm. And a lot of people, when you're doing research, you have to put your mind in the time period that the records were recorded. So the death certificates of today is not what the death certificates were before 1908, when the state health department was officially organized and they started mandating the recordings of the births and deaths at the state level. The early death records would include the basic information. You have the deceased person's name. You have, how old he or she may have been. What was the cause of death? Their last place of residence, where they died, the date of death, and that's about it. You're not going to find the parents' names on those early death records, unless it may have been infant death, or sometimes later on, 1907, 1908, the recorder may have started recording some of that information in preparation for the state health department taking over in 1908. So our death records, we do not have these in a book form. These are only available on microfilm. However, they have been indexed through the Rutherford B. Hayes website, and that's rbhayes.org. R as in Rutherford, B as in boy, Hayes, HAYES.org. We had formed a partnership with them many years ago, and so a lot of our, any type of index that's related to death, whether it's death records, the probate court records, the cemetery records, a lot of that's available through RB Hayes. Likewise, that's where we have our death records indexed. Another place is through the Wayne County Cemetery Preservation Society's website, and that website may be changing here in the coming days because that society no longer exists. It may become part of the Wayne County Genealogical Society. So we're still working out the details for that. But our death records here in Wayne County are divided in two volumes, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 goes through about 1880, from 1867 to about 1886, 1887, and then Volume 2 picks up from there. Now, if you're interested in death records or death certificates after 1908, these can be found through FamilySearch.org. They actually have the images digitized and free of charge for you to download. And it's just underneath Ohio death certificates from 1908 to 1953, I believe, is the time period that they have. And those actually include additional information. Those should include the parents' names on it if the informant knew the information. It also will include not only the name of the deceased and his or her age, also his place of birth. Sometimes it may just be the state, it may just be the country, sometimes it may give a specific village or a specific town or a specific city. You may also find the parents' names and then where they were born. You'll find the cause of death. You'll find who the medical doctor would have been, and you'll find who the informant is. And it's important to take a look at that informant information to see who may have been contributing information, because that may depend on how accurate the information may or may not be. Keep in mind that the death certificates include both first-hand information as well as second-hand information. So normally the name of the deceased is going to be correct, the date of the death is going to be correct, and the cause of death is going to be correct. Everything else is all secondary. It's based on hearsay, and that's going to depend on how informed the informant may have been. And the other information you may find on the death certificates after 1908 would be the place of interment. Sometimes they'll give the actual cemetery. Other times they may just give that they're buried in Fredericksburg or they're buried in Worcester, and it won't give the actual name of the cemetery. I also want to make a notation here that the deaths from 1867 to 1908 were not recorded at the time that the death took place. Normally they record the information twice in the year. Sometimes May and June would be the first time, and then the second time may be in like December or January of the following year. This presents a small problem because in 1908, the deaths are only recorded until about May of 1908, because that was the first time that they would have recorded the deaths that occurred in 1908 and made the latter part of 1907. In December 1908, this is when the state health department sort of took over, so to speak, and they actually, the death records at the local level were never recorded for the months of June of 1908 through December of 1908. So if you are looking for a death record for that time period, chances are you're not going to find it here in Wayne County. Now, once again, this may differ from different counties within Ohio. I'm most familiar with what goes on here locally because this is what I work with on a full-time basis. But even if you can't find the actual death record, remember there are several other ways that you can actually try to verify this information. And one of those would be like a probate court record, whether your individual died intestate or whether they died testate, leaving a will and last testament. You may also find some obituary that may give information. You may also find a cemetery record or a burial record or interment record that may provide that information. So just because you cannot find the death certificate doesn't mean that you can't find that information. So as a recap to this whole series, keep in mind that a lot of times births and deaths would happen at home, and they were not always recorded at the local level. And I've even found, even after 1908, that they were not necessarily recorded either at the state level. And so you do have to use alternative resources to try to verify that information. So if you're trying to find a death date, for example, don't limit your search to just a death certificate or a death record. You may want to look at the interment record. You may want to look at a probate record. You may want to look at the newspapers, an obituary, anything like that. You may want to look at a history book. Likewise with the birth records, you may want to look at other alternative resources, because if you contact our department looking for a birth record for an individual in 1832, you're not going to have one because they just don't exist. Now there's a good possibility that You may find a guardianship that may give the specific birth date of the individual, if there was a guardianship filed here. So that would be an alternative source. Also, you want to stick with, the census records. Although, it doesn't give you specific dates, it gives you an idea, a ballpark in terms of when they may have been born. And if you're looking at the mortality schedule, that would be another option for trying to find out a specific death date. And those do exist for 1849 through about May of 1850 and 1860 and 1870. And there's a few other schedules, federal population schedules or non-population schedules that may provide that information. So I'm hoping that this series has been helpful. Once again, if you have any questions, any type of feedback, feel free to contact our department. You can reach us by phone at 330-262-0916. You can reach us by email. The general department email is genealogy@wcpl.info, and that's genealogy@wcpl.info. Or you can contact me directly at the Kitco, and that's Deborah, D for Deborah, Kitco, K-I-T as in Tom, K-O, at wcpl.info. And if you have not subscribed yet to the library's YouTube channel, I encourage you to do so. You can just push on that subscribe button, and it will open up a whole new world. Right now, our library is not able to do in-person programming, so this is how we're actually reaching out to our to the population, to our normal researchers who come in, or to the public that come in, just trying to give them some insight and keep some communication going between the library and those who frequent our library. So once again, if you have any questions, contact me, and I'm hoping that this series has been useful. Thank you.